For most of agricultural history, water scarcity was not solved by hoses, pumps, or irrigation schedules. It was solved by understanding how soil holds and releases moisture. 300 years ago, farmers in arid and temperate regions alike learned that the real enemy was not drought itself, but evaporation. Once water escaped the soil surface, crops suffered, regardless of how much rain had fallen before. The method you are about to hear was designed to stop that loss at its source, and when applied correctly, it can keep soil moist for weeks with no added water. How the old hydration method worked by sealing the soil instead of soaking it. The technique appears in European farm manuals from the 1700s and in older Asian and Middle Eastern traditions under different names. The principle was simple but precise. After watering or rainfall, the top layer of soil was deliberately loosened to create what farmers called a dry seal. This loose layer acted as insulation, preventing capillary action from pulling moisture upward where heat and wind could steal it. Water remained deeper in the soil profile, exactly where roots could reach it. Modern science, really does confirm what these farmers already knew. Capillary evaporation, it turns out, is the main cause of moisture loss in bare or compacted soils. Why disturbing soil at the right time mattered more than how much water was applied. Timing was everything, truly. Farmers never cultivated dry soil to retain water. Instead, they worked the surface only after rain or irrigation, when the ground beneath was fully charged with moisture. By lightly breaking the crust on top, they interrupted the continuous soil pores that normally act like straws drawing water upward. This was not deep tillage, not at all. It was shallow, controlled, and intentional. The deeper soil remained intact and moist, while the surface layer, it sacrificed itself to dryness. Now, here's how this method, differs completely from modern mulching assumptions. These days, mulching is often presented as the only way to conserve moisture. While mulch is indeed effective, it simply wasn't always available historically, especially in those vast grain-growing regions. What's fascinating is that this hydration method required no imported material at all. Unlike mulch, which shades the soil, the dry soil seal actually works by breaking the physical pathway that allows evaporation. So even under direct sun, moisture remains trapped below. It's quite a clever approach, really. This is precisely why historical accounts describe fields staying productive through extended dry periods, even with minimal rainfall. It's a testament to the ingenuity of traditional farming practices. Now then, let's talk about how to apply this 300-year-old hydration method step by step. First, begin by watering deeply, or if you prefer, you can apply the method immediately after a good rainfall. Allow the water to penetrate at least several inches into the soil. This is really quite important. The next day, once you notice the surface starting to dry, but the subsurface still feels damp, take a hoe, a rake, or perhaps a simple hand tool, and lightly loosen just the top 1 to 2 inches of soil. The aim here, I should say, isn't to turn or mix the soil. Rather, you want to create a fine, crumbly layer right on top. This layer ought to feel dry to the touch, while underneath the soil remains cool and moist. Once you've formed this layer, it's best to leave it undisturbed. You see, every footprint, heavy watering, or any sort of compaction will reconnect those evaporation channels, and that rather defeats the whole purpose. Now, let me explain why this technique managed to keep the soil moist for, well, a full 2 weeks. Both historical and modern trials have shown that soils treated in this manner consistently retain moisture much longer than, untreated ground. By stopping capillary evaporation, the loss of moisture slows to a crawl. Plants, as a result, can draw water gradually without having to compete with the heat and wind. In practical terms, this really means you might only need to water once, instead of every few days. In survival situations, this approach can, quite frankly, make a huge difference, stretching limited water supplies dramatically. Now, why did ancient farmers prefer this method during heat waves? Well, during extreme heat, watering alone often fails, you see. Moisture just flashes off the surface within a few hours. Farmers noticed, actually, that wet soil would bake hard and crack, which in turn really sped up moisture loss. The dry soil seal, interestingly enough, prevented crusting and cracking entirely. Because the surface stayed loose, heat penetration was slowed, and soil life remained active below. Quite clever, really. This practice also supported root depth and drought resilience. Plants grown under this system developed deeper root systems, simply because surface moisture was unavailable. So roots followed the water downward, making crops more drought-tolerant over time. This was not accidental. Ancient farmers understood that shallow watering produced weak plants. Moisture stored deeper trained roots properly. Over generations, this created fields adapted to dry climates without external inputs. Why modern irrigation often undoes this ancient advantage. Frequent light watering reconnects soil pores repeatedly, pulling moisture back to the surface. Compaction from foot traffic and machinery, well, it worsens the effect. The old method requires, well, a bit of restraint. You water deeply, seal once, and then you simply leave the soil alone. It is, honestly, counterintuitive to modern habits, but it is highly effective. Now, here's how this method fits perfectly with other historical soil practices. The dry soil seal pairs quite naturally with living roots, organic matter, and, of course, minimal disturbance. It does not replace mulch where mulch is available, but it functions independently when resources are, a bit limited. For raised beds, open fields and survival gardens, it remains one of the most efficient hydration techniques ever recorded. Why this knowledge disappeared, and why it matters now. Cheap water, pumps and hoses made conservation seem unnecessary. The method faded from memory, not because it failed, but because convenience replaced understanding. As water scarcity returns globally, these techniques regain relevance. This is not nostalgia. It is practical history. If this kind of forgotten agricultural knowledge matters to you, Subscribe to Botanical Bliss and share this guide so these proven methods are not lost again.